What's up, y'all? I'm going to just get right into it. First, I'm going to be talking to you as a black man who was a private citizen. And then, after being a black man that is a private citizen, I'm also going to talk from the perspective of a black man that has experience working in the prison system. Now, I'm going to explain to you, some of y'all may not understand this, but it is what it is. Although inmate politics in the prisons and the jails should be only among the inmates, there are times where those racial politics and the segregation and all that stuff, it bleeds over to us. And a lot of times, black officers get the raw end of the stick, or black officers are put in a situation to where we got to speak up. And when we speak up, right, it's not everybody. A lot of them is tap dancing. They don't want to, they doing the jazz hands. But for the ones that are conscious and they take pride in who they are, it's like you find yourself, it's almost like it looks like you're defending black inmates, but you're not. It's just that you're just defending your people in general, because a lot of the stereotypes that are given to black inmates in the prison, it somehow they think that applies to all of us, and that's just not true. Now, the video I'm talking about, it was from when Mr. Hector Bravo, that prison guard, I guess he did an interview with Dubs, and I saw or heard of the interview through Mr. Chill on 16 to Life. And so I guess they were supposed to be talking about other races in prison cars, but for whatever reason, it slid over to the black inmates, right? And some of the stuff that was said about the black inmates, it was kind of triggering to me. And again, not because I'm trying to defend black inmates, but it's because you sometimes find yourself having to just defend your own race, because you have a lot of people, right? Let's just keep it real. Like, for instance, right? I got experience from working in the feds. So you got people from all over the country that work in the feds. So they could grow up in the sticks somewhere in the Midwest. They ain't never seen no black folks in their life, except for what they seen on the TV show Cops, the movies and the TV shows. So when they start coming into contact, with these black, not officers, but these black inmates from a day-to-day basis, that's the only experience or exposure that they really have to black folks. And so they think that's how we all act. And it's so unfair. Now, this stuff where Dubs and what's his name, that prison guard Hector Bravo was talking about, it can be those types of conversations that are had where I work, and it turns into these long, drawn-out, drama-filled situations, because we're constantly saying, man, that ain't everybody. We don't all do that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to give you a good example, and then I'll get into the other stuff. You guys heard of the DC Blacks, right? Now, I'm going to do a video soon on them. But with the DC Blacks, right, they're a very vicious car, very violent. But one of the things that they have on their collective jacket, not everybody in the DC car does this, but there's a lot that does. And that has to do with gunning the female staff. They sometimes gun male staff. And gunning is where basically they pleasure themselves in front of an officer. It's usually a female, but sometimes it could be a male. So I was standing at Mainline one day, and I think this was my rookie year. And so I was standing next to this female officer, right? And, we're doing random pat downs as they come out. So this black inmate comes out of the chow hall, and he's, at the main corridor or whatever. And so she was like, oh, can you pat him down? I don't pat down black inmates. So obviously, immediately, because I'm a black man, I turned and looked at her, and I was like, hold on, we're going to talk about that in a second. Pat the dude down, he left. So I was like, what do you mean you don't pat down black inmates? Oh, because, the blacks, they're gunners, and they're just nasty. And I said, wait a minute, time out. I'm black. I was like, I ain't never heard of this stuff until I started, getting experience in the feds. I've never heard of no gunners and people doing all this crazy stuff. I ain't never been around that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And we don't just do that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But because she had interactions with certain certain blacks, right, from different regions, she just cast this wide net saying that we all do that stuff. And I promise you, I ain't never been around. I never even heard of that nonsense until, you know what I'm saying, I started working in the federal system. And so in that same vein, right, when you hear Dubs making these insinuations, right, because again, even though they're talking about inmate prison politics, it can still draw us in and get us involved with the other staff members, because the same things that Dubs was saying, or the same conclusion that Hector Bravo was coming up to, you have COs that feel that same way. And sometimes they express it, sometimes they don't. But when Dubs, he threw it out there, he threw out the insinuation that, you know, blacks don't check paperwork and blacks are disorganized and, you know, disrespectful, this, that, and the other. Now that goes from just straight inmate politics into like population, like on the street, right? You're roping in, or you're trying to indict the entire black community, the black population. Yes, we got issues with disorganization. Yes, we have issues with trying to be a collective one. But everybody in the black community, we're not out here gang banging. Everybody in the black community ain't doing no crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, again, this is one of the things that happens, right? When you work in law enforcement, if you a conscious black man, now again, I ain't talking about, because I work with some straight up tap dancing, Massa, what you want? Jazz hands. Hey, Massa. I work with people just like that. But I'm not one of them. So when you're a proud of your heritage, you're proud of your community, and you come into this environment where you have people that prior to working in the prison, they had no exposure to black folks, and all they know about black folks is from what they see in the prison or whatever, that is very disheartening, and it is discouraging, and it's also disrespectful to think that all of us do that. Now, I don't have the stats. Now, here's a little thing, right? I'll give a little tip for some other channel. They can go look up the stats. But I said, you know what? Let me go look at the stats, right? So you can go on the Uniform Crime Report or Uniform Crime Index from the FBI, and then you can go to like the crime data from the FBI where it can show state by state. Now, they were talking about people that, you know, I don't want to use the word, so I don't want to get flagged, but they'll talk about things like bad paperwork for the R word or other things related to that stuff, chomo type stuff, right? Well, when you go and you look at the national numbers, you know the people that lead the league for that stuff? It's white folks. We don't lead the league for that. Now, again, this is a perfect example. Even though this discussion was about inmate politics and how the inmates might do their thing, it can still bleed over to us, right, as conscious black men. Again, I'm not talking about the jazz hands, tap dancing COs. I'm talking about the ones that, you know, are solid individuals, right? That ropes us into it. But when you look at the national reports for the I word, I'll just say insect, but it means something else. It's not insect, but it's a crime when you commit it. And then when you look at the R word, things of that nature, the people that lead the league on a national level, and then even when you look at the stats from the state level just of California, it is white folks that lead the league with those crimes. Now, yes, you do have some black folks that participate in that, but they are nowhere near, you know what I'm saying, the population of the whites that are involved in that. For the most part, the blacks, when it comes to those stats, you're going to have the high numbers when it comes to the murders, when it comes to the manslaughters, when it comes to your, robberies, and I think even burglaries, I think. But as far as everything else, you can go look it up for yourself. I might put the link in the description so y'all can see it for yourself. But it is just so crazy because when you come into work, and at least in the state of California, right, West Coast, you have to deal with so many racial issues among the inmates that bleed over to the staff. You know what I'm saying? And so when people like Dubs, right, when he's spreading all these seeds of dissension, and, you know, he tries to, and I'm gonna just keep it real right now. I don't have no personal beef with him, but I want to address this because those opinions that he has, those are the same opinions that officers have, these white and Hispanic officers have about us, and that causes tension because we got to constantly say again, nah, player, that's not how we get down. You know what I'm saying? But when I did my other video on Dubs, I think it got like 21 or 22,000 views. It did pretty good for my size channel. You have some of Dub's little, you know, homies or whatever going down there trying to defend them, this, that, and the other. But I want to see what y'all got to say now, right? Go to 16 to Life's channel and look up the video where he did a response about it. Dubs, he ain't fooling me. Now, he might be fooling y'all, right? He gets on there and try to do this whole gangster Mr. Miyagi situation where you want to do these, you know, philosophical Jedi mind trick conversations to make y'all think he's doing one thing while he's doing something else. But again, the people that are game dumb, they won't understand that. But when I saw this video from 16 to Life, I was like, man, I gotta talk about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because it's real, man, and it really affects us. Now, yes, okay, let me answer this part. Now, they were talking in the context of the state prison, right? Now, when it comes, you know, because I got experience from working in the feds, right? So it's a totally different ballgame in the feds because I can say this, right, pretty solidly, that when it comes to the West Coast gangs or the gangs within California, the blacks and stuff, I'll say this, the gang time stuff, right? The West Coast gangs and sets and all that stuff, they check paperwork, right? They check it religiously. Now, other parts of the country where they may not be gang driven, or it may not be like on the same level of gangbanging as LA or the same structure, they may not check paperwork, but it's just dependent on the different cars. Now, I'm going to come on here and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to get on here and start naming which cars check paperwork, which don't. I have a good idea because some of them within the cars have told me, but I'm not trying to put people on blast, things of that nature. But also, too, there's some things that I just don't know. And even with your best gang investigators, they still don't know certain things because they're not supposed to, right? The inmates are supposed to keep all this stuff under lock and key, but obviously it doesn't always happen. But as far as like Hispanics, right? I've seen some. Now, let me think before I say it because I'm not trying to go overboard. But I would say I've seen some dudes from different Hispanic gangs that have had some questionable paperwork or they've had some bad paperwork. Now, in that video, when you go watch it on Mr. Chill's page, 16 to Life, you'll see where Hector Bravo brought up a situation where there was a Southsider that was he had some bad paperwork allegedly or whatever. And for whatever reason, he was asked, hey, do you feel comfortable staying on the yard? And he was like, yeah, I'm cool. I can stay. So after that was done, then Dubs came in, right? Doing this little Mr. Miyagi stuff and whatever. You know, he tried to make an excuse for it. And he was trying to apply some type of exception, right? And so there are other situations where that happens, where you have people that have questionable paperwork, but they got somebody else that may vouch for them, or there might be some other mitigating circumstances that come into play, and somehow all is forgiven. You know what I mean? But it's crazy, man. And I know some people, again, they're going to run their mouth. They're going to say, oh, well, what does inmate prison politics have to do with you? Or you a CO, you supposed to just be there, feed them and do this and do that and whatever. But I'm here to tell you, man, when the inmates, they already have their racial boundaries. They already have their preconceived notions based on race. And those preconceived notions, all of those politics, it bleeds over to the officers, and the officers have those same type of feelings. So obviously, if they express those feelings, you know, the officers, then we got to respond. Just like with that female, And I was on my rookie year. You know, I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but I'm like, man, hold on. This is crazy. What you mean you don't pat down no black inmates? We all don't do that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's certain cars that, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's allowed, but I can say there are certain cars where it's permissible, because there are certain cars that they just don't check paperwork for whatever reason. I don't know the reasons. Maybe they're just interested in strength in numbers. I don't know. Who knows? But just know, man, that when that video was on, it was kind of like a trigger, man, because it's a challenge. And I'll give you another example, right? You'll have, you know, these white and Hispanic officers, right? And they'll talk, you know, now usually they won't say it around us that, you know what I'm saying, we solid black individuals, we take pride in our community and who we are, we're educated, whatever the case may be. They won't do that around us. But, you know, around the jazz hands, you know, the ones doing the two-step and the tap dancing, they'll let things slip out and they'll say certain things. And then, of course, we find out about it. And it's like, man, we all don't do that stuff. But I can say this, and this is just now, as a private citizen, as a black man, this is just my own personal opinion. And I do feel like not just amongst the inmates, but also among the white and Hispanic, you know, officers and stuff, they really feel like they boo-boo don't stink. And our boo-boo is the only one that stinks. And it's like, well, hold up now. You know, y'all got some problems too. And we have those discussions too. Because again, it just bleeds over. That's the only way I can explain it. It bleeds over. So, you know, when they say, oh man, you know, here goes the black, you know, they don't check paperwork, or, you know, they allow chomos or this or that or whatever the situation may be. And then they get a little too cocky about it. And then we find out, you know what I'm saying? Or they could possibly slip up and say it in front of us, and then we respond to that. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Now, I know to some people, they're going to think I done lost my mind. They're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm making this stuff up. But I'm telling it like it T.I. is. I'm keeping it a buck with you guys. And it's hard, man. And let me finish off with this part so I can kind of get away from, you know, the Mr. Miyagi stuff Dubs is trying to do. And I'm keeping this real. And I'm just saying this as a black, conscious and proud individual of my community. It is hard working in law enforcement as a conscious black man. It is extremely difficult, okay? Because it's like, if you're not willing to do the jazz hands, if you're not willing to do that tap dancing and massa, hey massa, good morning, can I get you some coffee? You know, if you're not willing to do that, then it's going to be extremely difficult. And even with the people that do the jazz hands and they do the tap dancing, for whatever reason, they think they're one of them, but they're not. They just tolerate you. Now, in the regular workplace, I know this would sound insane. If you're working in some office job, or if you're working at Costco, or even if you're working for another government job that's just office-based or whatever, I know the stuff that I'm telling you is probably out of this world crazy. But unfortunately, these are the realities of where I work, right? And not only that, even people on the streets that are involved in the LE community. It is just hard because the stereotypes that they love to use against us, and no matter how messed up the stereotypes might be, no matter how condescending or no matter how disrespectful the stereotypes are, they believe that stuff. And they may not come to you and say it directly, but they show through their actions that they believe that. And it just seeps out of them. It's something that you cannot put a bottle on it. There's no cap you can put on it. There's no seal that you can put on it. Their true feelings come out. And as I said in my previous video, I work in MAGA country, right? And in the same way, and I'm going to do a video on this one because other people might try to steal it, but you can't take my perspective. You can't take how I flow and how I deliver it. But when it comes to working in that environment, right? Because when the stuff hits the fan, and it could be an all-out race war, it can be everybody against the blacks. So it could be, I don't know if it would, I mean, it can happen, right? Let's say if the Northerners and the Southerners came together. Now in the feds, that's something different, because the feds, they got a keep away situation. So if you have Norteños that have a yard, Southsiders can't come. And if the Southsiders have a yard, the Norteños can't come. So I'll have to X them out. The Norteños, not out of disrespect, but they would have their own yard. But let's just say if you had Southsiders, if you had Paisas, if you had your other Mexican gang factions like Tango Blast. Now, I'm going to do a video one day on Tango Blast, because Tango Blast, they some riders, man. Them dudes, they some riders, man. But when you put the Southsiders, the Paisas, the Tango Blast, your Puerto Rican gangs, different things like that, it can, and the white boys, right? It'll be all of them versus the blacks. And I think the only ones that might come to the blacks' aid would be the Hawaiian dudes, the Polynesians, the Islanders. I think those might be the only ones that would go to their aid. But in the same way that all of them will gang up and do their thing, that's the same thing that happens to the black officers, right? Now, I'm only talking about the conscious black officers that's not kissing behind and all that stuff. You can have the whites, the Hispanics, and the other officers that have their own little rotten culture, and they will go against us. So all those negative stereotypes that they believe dearly in their hearts, they hold that against us. And there's times, I'll tell you this last story, and then I'm gonna go. I remember this dude. This is a 1000% true story. There was this black dude, and the crazy thing was he only had like 18 months left until he went home. And for whatever reason, this dude broke off a piece of it was the fire alarm, where you have the part at the bottom. It kind of looks like I don't know what you want to call it. Whatever it's called, it's like this little strip, right? He broke it off and he stuck it up his rear end, because his thing was to do body mutilation, to go to the hospital, manipulate the system. So I'm sitting here because I had to take him out with somebody else. So we're looking at this dude in the observation tank, and he's over here bent over. He's like, man, I can't get it out. I can't get it out. And so I'll never forget it, because I was just waiting for one of them to say something. I'm just keeping it. Now, I would not have resorted to violence. I would not have broken policy or anything like that. But I was just waiting for them to say something, because I think it was like 3 white COs and a Hispanic CO. And they were on the other side of the hallway. It wasn't, I don't know, maybe like 8 to 10 feet. We were away from each other, but they could see it from their angle and I could see it from mine. And the way they were looking at that black dude and they were laughing, I know for a fact, just by the looks on their face, the way they was whispering stuff, if my black behind wasn't standing right there, I know they would have been calling him all type of N-words. I know they would have been calling him all type of racial slurs, all that stuff. I know they would have, because that's the culture there. When you're severely outnumbered, whatever culture they set, whatever the thermometer is or the thermostat, whatever they set, that's what it's going to be. And when all that stuff was over, I ain't even gonna lie, I chewed that inmate out. I chewed him out. And I was like, you coming up in here embarrassing yourself, and it's like, it's already hard enough for, black men and women to work up in here because of these, the racial issues here. And then also too, the black inmates, they deal whatever they deal with, but it's like you come up here and act a fool, and I was like, you better be glad I was standing there, because I had to take them out, right? With some other people. But I was like, man, if I wasn't standing there, you don't know what could have happened to you, or you don't know what they would have said about you, and I'll just leave it at that. But hopefully you got some edification out this video. I told y'all I was going to keep this video real. I was going to talk about it from the perspective of, for one, being a black man that is a private citizen that takes pride in my community. I love my culture, my heritage, all that. And it's no different than when you have people from the Italian culture or people of Eastern descent or not Middle East descent, or the Jewish community or the Asian community, they take pride in their communities. They take pride in their culture. So I take the same pride, right? So there's just some stuff that I'm just not going for. I'm not going for it. And again, no violence, no threats, nothing like that. I'm just saying professionally addressing it, right? So it is what it is. Some of y'all may not understand this video, but hopefully some of y'all will. But until the next one, holla at your boy.